I'd been going to the same corner coffee shop for months, mostly out of habit. The kind of place that doesn't change its playlist, where the barista already knows you'll mumble, "Medium drip, no room," without making eye contact. I like that. Predictable. No one asking questions. That morning, I spotted her before I even stepped in, sitting near the window with a paperback folded face down on the table, fingers wrapped around a chipped white mug. My friend's mom. I knew she came here sometimes, but it was still enough to make my stomach tighten. She glanced up when the bell over the door rang, then back down quickly, as if she hadn't noticed me. But I caught the smallest lift at the corner of her mouth. "Hey," I said, sliding into line. "Hey," she replied, not loud enough for anyone else to hear. "Just for me," I ordered, pretended to study the pastry case. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed her folding the edge of a napkin over and over, smoothing the crease each time like she was buying herself a few seconds of thought. When the barista set my cup down, she called out, "Same as always." And I heard the older woman, my friend's mom, let out this soft laugh, like she was amused by the fact someone my age could already be so predictable. I carried my coffee past a dozen empty tables and stopped at hers. "Mind if I?" She lifted her book, turning it so the spine faced me. Poems of Rilke. Not exactly casual reading. "Sure," she said. "But I warn you, I'm bad company when I'm halfway through something." I said anyway. "I'm worse when I haven't started anything." That made her laugh again, just once, and then we fell into that quiet rhythm only two half-strangers can manage. Her eyes on the page, mine on the steam curling from my cup. Every now and then I found myself looking at her hands. She wore no rings, just faint traces of ink on her thumb, maybe from a pen she'd used earlier. She caught me once, and instead of pulling her hand back, she tapped the edge of the napkin. "You're awfully still for someone your age. Most 20-somethings can't sit without checking their phone." "I do check it," I said. "Just never hit send." She tilted her head, waiting. "Texts I write. Then delete." That pause between us stretched. She didn't press, just went back to folding the napkin, only this time slower. The shop grew louder around us. Espresso hiss, a chair scraping the floor, someone laughing too hard at the counter. But at the table, it was strangely calm. She turned one page, then another, but her eyes didn't really move across the lines. I wanted to say something else, something that explained why I never minded running into her, why I thought about these accidental meetings long after they ended. But all I managed was, "You always sit here, right by the window." "Habit," she said. "Helps me feel less invisible." Her voice trailed off at the end. She pressed the folded napkin flat, as though sealing the words inside it. When my coffee was nearly gone, I stood, not sure whether to leave with a casual nod or a clumsy goodbye. She looked up then, almost startled. "Don't leave yet," she said. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even urgent. But something in the way she held my eyes, steady, unblinking, made the air feel heavier than it had a second before. I sat back down, heartbeat too quick, wondering what exactly had just shifted, and what might come next. The coffee in my cup had long gone cold, but neither of us moved. She had stopped pretending to read, and I'd stopped pretending not to notice her. "You don't usually talk this much," she said finally. I smiled, a little embarrassed. "I usually don't." Her eyes softened. "That's not a bad thing. Most people fill silence with noise." The pause that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavier though, like the kind that carried too much meaning for two people who weren't supposed to share it. She set her book down, flattening the dog-eared page with care. "When my son was your age, he used to sit right there. Same seat. Wouldn't talk either. Just existed. Quietly. The mention of him, my friend, hung between us like smoke. I shifted in my chair, unsure if I should apologize for intruding on something so personal. He doesn't come around much anymore," she added, almost to herself. I nodded slowly. "Guess we all drift, eventually." Her gaze flicked to me. And yet here you are. That made my chest tighten. There was no accusation in her voice, but something in it still made me glance away, pretending to study the condensation on my cup. I thought about all the reasons I shouldn't be sitting across from her, the years between us, the fact that her son had once been my closest friend. The way even the smallest shift in tone felt like stepping toward a line I wasn't supposed to cross. But when I looked back, she was still watching me, waiting. I cleared my throat. When I was a kid, my dad used to take me to a diner every Sunday. Same booth. He'd drink black coffee, I'd get pancakes. He stopped going after the divorce. But I still find myself looking for that booth whenever I pass by. Her lips pressed together in a quiet smile. You're holding on to a place. I hold on to habits. Maybe that's how we keep people close, even when they're gone. The way she said it, gone, landed somewhere deeper than casual conversation. I wanted to ask who she meant, but instead I let the question sit unspoken, respecting the silence she wrapped around it. Outside, the light was shifting. Rain tapped against the glass, soft but steady. The shop was thinning out, and for a moment, it felt like the two of us were the only ones left in the room. She noticed me watching the rain. Want some tea? She asked, already gathering her things. I followed her to the counter where she ordered chamomile for herself, green for me, sliding the second cup across the table without asking if I wanted it. I caught her fingers brushing the rim before I picked it up. We sat there, steam rising between us, either drinking right away. When I finally lifted my cup, she reached across, almost absent-mindedly, and smoothed the wrinkle at my sleeve. Just one quick gesture, then she pulled her hand back like it was nothing. But the heat from her touch stayed longer than the tea ever could. And I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The rain had stopped by the time we finished our tea. She checked her phone, thumb hovering over the screen, then set it face down without unlocking it. You should probably head out, she said, though she didn't look at me when she said it. The words stung more than they should have. I nodded, started to gather my things. But then, or stay. If you want. She said it softer, like she hadn't meant to. I froze halfway out of my chair. My chest felt unsteady, like I'd walked into air too thin to breathe. Before I could answer, the bell over the door jingled. Someone walked in, a guy from class. He spotted me immediately, hand lifting in a casual wave. Hey, man. I nodded back, quick. Too quick. My friend's mom shifted slightly in her chair, angling herself toward the window as though she hadn't been sitting across from me at all. The guy lingered by the counter. I felt the heat of her silence, her careful distance. My shoulders tightened. When he finally left, the room seemed smaller. She leaned back, folding her arms. See? That's why. She didn't finish. Why what? Her lips pressed together. A small shake of her head. Nothing. But the way she said it wasn't nothing. I wanted to reach across the table, touch her wrist, tell her I didn't care who walked in. But instead I sat back too, mirroring her distance. My knee bounced under the table. You ever think about? I started, then stopped. She tilted her head. Waiting. Forget it. Her laugh was small, almost tired. You're not very good at hiding things. Neither was she. I saw it in the way her fingers toyed with the handle of her mug, spinning it a quarter turn, then again, as if she needed something steady to hold. I shouldn't. She began, then bit the inside of her cheek, looking down. Her voice barely carried over the hum of the espresso machine. Something in my chest tightened. The way she avoided my eyes made me want to bridge the gap, to undo whatever weight was pulling her back. But the truth pressed against me too, my friend's face, the years between us, the way this would look from the outside. Still, I leaned in just slightly. Close enough that her breath stirred when she exhaled. Her eyes flicked up, startled. For a moment, too long, too dangerous, we didn't look away. If I moved even an inch closer, the air would break. But she was the one who shifted first, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her hand trembling just enough for me to notice. I sat back, pulse heavy. Neither of us spoke. And in that silence, sharper than any words, I realized how close we were to a line we couldn't uncross. We left the cafe together without planning to. The sidewalk was still wet, the air damp and cool. She walked a step ahead, her arms folded against the chill. "Do you need a ride?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder. "I'm fine," I said. "I'll walk." She slowed her pace until we were side by side. The street was quiet except for the hiss of tires on wet pavement. Neither of us spoke for a while. We reached the small park near the corner. She stopped by a bench and sat down, brushing water droplets off the wooden slats before resting her hands in her lap. I hesitated, then sat beside her. She kept her eyes on the dark grass. "You shouldn't linger with me like this." Her voice wasn't harsh. If anything, it sounded tired, frayed at the edges. "I don't see what's wrong with sitting here," I said. She turned to me, eyebrows drawn. "You don't?" The weight of her gaze was too much. I looked down at my shoes, tracing the outline of a puddle with the toe. "I mean, maybe I do. But I'm here anyway." That earned a quiet laugh, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. She pressed her palms together, as if she were holding something in. "You remind me," she said slowly, "how quickly everything slips. Youth. Time. Choices you don't get back." I didn't know what to do with that. I wanted to tell her she hadn't slipped anywhere, that she was the most vivid person I'd ever sat beside. Instead, I just nodded, afraid my voice would give too much away. A group of teenagers passed on the other side of the street, their voices carrying in bursts of laughter. She watched them until they disappeared around the corner, then whispered, "Sometimes I hate being noticed. And sometimes I hate being invisible even more." Something in me cracked at that. Before I could stop myself, I said, "You're not invisible." "Not to me." She turned sharply, eyes locking onto mine. For a second, I thought she might tell me to leave. Instead, her hand lifted just slightly, then fell back to her lap. "You're my son's friend," she murmured, almost as if reminding herself. The words should have stopped me. They didn't. "I don't think of you that way," I said. My voice shook, softer than I meant, but clear enough. Her lips parted, like she might reply, but nothing came. Just the sound of our breathing, the faint hum of a street lamp overhead. The distance between us felt thinner than air. If either of us leaned in, even a fraction, everything would change. She finally spoke, barely audible. "What are we doing?" The question lingered there, heavy and dangerous, with no answer safe enough to give. The next few days, I avoided the cafe. Not because I didn't want to see her, because I did. Too much. Every time I thought of her question, "What are we doing?" my stomach tightened. I didn't have an answer that wouldn't make me sound reckless. Or worse, young. On the fourth morning, I caved. I walked in, expecting her at the same window table, book face down, coffee cooling beside her hand. But the chair was empty. The barista handed me my usual without asking. "Your friend hasn't been around this week," she said casually, like she was telling me about the weather. "Right," I murmured, as if it meant nothing. I carried the cup to a corner seat. Waited. Pretended to scroll through my phone. Checked the door every time it opened. She never came. By evening, I found myself standing in front of her apartment door. The hallway smelled of old paint and detergent. My hand hovered over the wood, ready to knock, but I froze when I heard laughter inside, male, younger. Her son. My friend. The sound jolted me like a slap. I stepped back, heart hammering. Of course he was here. Of course she was acting distant. She wasn't mine to linger around. I left without knocking. The next day, I wrote a message, "Are you okay? I miss seeing you." I stared at the words until my eyes blurred. Then I deleted them. That night, she called instead. Not a text, an actual call. Her name lit up my screen, and for a second, I just stared, not sure if I was brave enough to answer. I did. Her voice was steady, too steady. I should apologize. For what? I asked. For letting things blur. A pause. I wasn't fair to you. I swallowed, throat dry. You weren't unfair. Silence hummed between us. I could hear faint clinking in the background, maybe dishes being put away. Home noises. Ordinary life that had nothing to do with me. I have baggage, she said finally. A whole life behind me. You shouldn't have to carry any of it. The words cut, not because they were harsh, but because they were gentle. Like she was handing me back to myself. I didn't feel heartbroken. I would later think. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. When the line went quiet, I realized she wasn't going to say more. I almost told her I didn't care about her baggage, that I wanted the blur, that maybe that was the only place I felt alive. But the words never came. We hung up. The next morning, I walked into the cafe again. Ordered my coffee. Sat at her empty table, just for a moment, as if to test how it felt. The chair across from me stayed empty. And I didn't knock. I didn't send the message. I just waited. It was late when I finally saw her again. Not in the cafe, not in passing. At her doorstep. I hadn't meant to end up there. I'd been walking aimlessly, hands shoved deep in my pockets, until my feet just stopped in front of her building. Her light was on. The kind of soft yellow that made everything behind the curtains look warm. I almost turned away. Then the door opened. She stepped out with a bag of recycling in one hand, startled when she noticed me. You, she said, half exhale. Me, I answered uselessly. We both froze. She tightened her grip on the bag, then set it down by the door. Her arms folded, a shield against the night air. I shouldn't be here, I said. No, she agreed quietly. Then softer. But you are. The silence stretched. I heard the hum of a streetlight, the faint bark of a dog somewhere down the block. She was studying me, like she was deciding whether to let me in or send me away for good. I finally spoke. When you disappeared, I thought, maybe I'd imagined it all. The way you looked at me. The way I felt like. I stopped. Swallowed. Like you saw me. Her jaw tightened. I did. The words landed heavy, heavier than if she'd shouted. I took a step closer, not touching, just enough to feel the warmth radiating off her. Then why? Because it scares me, she said. The words came quick, as though she'd been holding them back too long. You're too young and I'm too marked. By life. By mistakes. By people who left. Her eyes glistened in the dim light, but her voice didn't waver. And if I let myself want this, it doesn't just change me. It changes you. And maybe I don't have the right to do that. My throat tightened. For a moment, I didn't know what to do with my hands, my body. I wanted to argue, to tell her she wasn't ruining me, she was the only part that felt unruined. Instead, I whispered, I get to decide too, don't I? Her eyes flickered, surprise cutting through the exhaustion. She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me, as if she was memorizing something. Finally, she let out a shaky laugh. God, you sound older than you should. I shrugged, though my chest was pounding. You make me feel older. Or maybe just real. For the first time in days, the tension in her shoulders eased. Not gone, but softened. She reached out, hesitating midair, then finally let her fingers brush mine. Just that. A small, almost accidental touch. Neither of us moved after that. We didn't rush in or away. We just stood in the glow of her porch light, the night pressing in around us, both of us breathing like the world had tilted. Her voice came, barely above a whisper. Okay. And it was enough. Weeks passed, and whatever we were didn't collapse, it simply adjusted. We never named it. There were no declarations, no sudden promises. But my mornings began shifting. Instead of drifting into the cafe whenever, I found myself showing up at 8:47 a.m., because that was when she usually did. Sometimes she was already there, a paperback face down beside her black coffee. Sometimes she arrived a minute after me, setting down her bag with a small smile that said more than words. The barista noticed, of course. People always do. But no one asked? And we never explained. It wasn't dramatic. It was tea slid across the table without asking. It was her folding a napkin into perfect lines while I finished her sentence halfway through. It was sitting on the same park bench, sometimes talking, sometimes just watching the leaves drift into puddles. She didn't push me to be more than I was. I didn't ask her to be less than she had lived. Somewhere in that middle ground, we settled, uneven, imperfect, but ours. One evening I stopped by her apartment. She opened the door before I could knock, as if she'd been waiting. Inside, the kitchen smelled faintly of chamomile. She moved about quietly, filling the kettle, her hair tied back in a way that made her look younger but also more herself. "Tea?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder. I nodded, watching how naturally she placed 2 mugs on the counter now, like the ritual had become muscle memory. We sat at the table. The same silence that had once been sharp and uncertain was now softer, familiar. She reached for my hand, not dramatically, just as if she'd forgotten she was allowed to. "Do you ever regret this?" I asked, surprising myself. She thought for a moment. Then, "No." "Do you?" I shook my head. "Not once." And it was true. Whatever fear had lingered before seemed smaller now, outweighed by the quiet steadiness of sitting beside her. Later, when we walked outside, the streetlight hummed the same way it had that first night. She paused at the bench, brushed her hand over the damp wood. "Funny," she said. "This spot feels different now. Because we sat here before? Because we came back," she corrected, giving me that look that held both gravity and warmth. I understood. Some things only matter because you return to them. We sat down, not caring about the chill. A car passed, headlights sweeping over us, then fading. She leaned her head lightly against my shoulder. No performance, no hesitation. Just there. I didn't feel like I'd stolen anything, or broken anything. I felt like I'd arrived where I was supposed to be, without even realizing I was heading there. She murmured, almost to herself, "Okay." The same word as that night, but softer now, settled. And I knew exactly what she meant.